good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to our weekly meetings for our Food for Sustainability webinars. You probably know me. My name is Claudia. I am the coordinator of the Food for Sustainability Academy, and I will be guiding this session today. I will start mainly by introducing our session, which will be moderated by our non-executive director, which I'm very pleased to have here today with us, Cristina Amar da Costa. So today we will continue with our topic on regenerative agriculture, and today we're going to meet those that preach and practice. So we have three distinguished speakers that have been experiencing and implementing some of the practices of regenerative agriculture. We will start in Spain, at Murcia, La Jonquera. Then we'll move to the Upper Alentejo to meet Herdade São Luís and the project Porcos Natura. And then we go a little bit further north to the UK, to the Norfolk district to meet Ben, which has been a pioneer in the UK in terms of these new regenerative practices. As always, with me, I have a great team that work very hard to prepare these webinars. In our regie, as always, and working hard to make these webinars available soon after we finish this recording. I have Silvia Moreira, our Science and Technology and Nutrition PhD. Silvia, are you there? Can you wave at us? Hello, Silvia. Good afternoon. We also have Rita Silva, our microbiologist. Rita, how can our participants access the recording of this webinar? Can you let us know?
Sure. This webinar will be available in our website. I will put the link in chat in the next week.
Okay, if not earlier. Thank you so much, Rita, and also Daniela Fonseca, our biochemistry PhD. Daniela, good afternoon. All together, they make the byproduct valorization team, and as always, they are here to assist you and to support you and to make sure that these webinars run smoothly. Thank you so much. So just before we start, just a short note on our house rules. We welcome all the questions from participants, and in fact we encourage them. Daniela, could you please let the audience know how they can take part in our discussion?
Yes, absolutely. Hello everyone and welcome. Well, if you have any questions, you just go to the chat and you write down your questions. We will just appreciate if you could just write first the name of the speaker to which the question is addressed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Daniela. Let me also remind you that today's webinar, as all webinars, will run for around 1.5 hours. The sessions are being recorded, so please just remain with your cameras off if you do not wish to appear. And as Rita has already mentioned, the webinars will be available for later viewing. Just to acknowledge that we have received several requests for having our webinars in Portuguese. We wouldn't be doing our webinars in Portuguese because otherwise we couldn't count with such lovely distinguished speakers, but we are trying hard to find a way to translate them into Portuguese. What we have found is that the automatic translations do not do a job to the standards that we need. Actually, it would be very fun if this would be translated with automatic translations into Portuguese. But let me remind you that we'll be running a series of workshops on regenerative agriculture in July in Portuguese and on site with farmers that have already started this regenerative agriculture principles. All this will be listed in our website. And of course, if you have any questions, please just drop us a line. Also, those that want some more hands-on practice on regenerative agriculture, I also remind you that we have ongoing our TransFarmers project. This is more directed towards almond and olive producers, and we will be taking a group of producers to Almeria in Spain to experience this practice and to share some of the expertise from our Spanish colleagues. So if you want, again, everything is available on the TransFarmers webpage. I wonder if some of the team could probably just post the link here on the chat, so that if anyone is interested, they can join us and we can all go and visit Spain. And finally, if you are a local breed producers, also to let you know that we have just started a project with the University of Turin, which we to develop a platform to bring closer producers of autochthonous species and consumers. So if you want to know a little bit more about this project, the outcomes, or to take part on this platform, please drop a line to Daniela Fonseca. She will be helped to assist you and to let you know a little bit more about the outcomes of the project. So after we have all the house rules explained, I will just start as usual to give you some figures to contextualize the need for the conversations that we are initiating here at Food for Sustainability. So I will start by sharing my screen. Hopefully everything will go smoothly. Just let me know if you can share my screen. Is that a yes or a no?
Yes, Claudia.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we will talk about regenerative agriculture, and the reason why we need to think a little bit more about other narratives for agriculture is that the current industrial farming system has been very successful and designed to produce large amounts of food that can feed the growing population of the planet. In fact, in the European Union, more than 90% of the fields are cultivated under conventional methods. However, this farming model, as we all know, has created serious problems, not only for human health, but also to the climate, biodiversity, to the soils itself in terms of fertility, and of course to the ecosystem as a whole. We also know that traditional farming systems, or the conventional farming system, involves huge amounts of fresh water and has a high nitrogen footprint, which adds to the agriculture's large share of the already a quarter of all anthropogenic greenhouse gases emissions. So we are facing a new reality. In fact, we can say that we are facing a paradox in saying that climate change has been producing more and more episodes of extreme weather, such as droughts and storms. We face a shortage of mineral fertilizers. Farmers are faced with soil erosion, a decline in pollinators, and many other factors, and that have not only been exacerbated by conventional farming, but at the same time, they represent a serious challenge for the current agriculture system. So what we have here is a vicious cycle of a downturn spiral that demands that we start to think about new narratives, new approaches to agriculture. And one of the bases for the success of conventional agriculture has been the use of pesticides. Pesticides in 1919 accounted for 2.3 million tons of pesticides that were used in our fields. But today, the amount reaches just over 4.1 million tons every year. So we are we doubled the quantity of pesticides that we are using. And agriculture toxins, the problem is that they don't affect just the plants and the living organisms against which they are used. They have a collateral damage because they destroy wild herbs and insects, which in turn are then lacking as sources of food for many other species. So what we are starting to experience is a critical loss of biodiversity. And researchers now expect that up to 1 million species are threatened with extinctions within the next decades. Pesticides pollute our food, our ground, and eventually they reach our body. So I don't know if you are aware, but around 90% of conventional fruits and vegetables are contaminated with some sort of pesticide residues. And such residues can also be found in our drinking water, and it's very costly to reduce these residues of pesticides, and water suppliers have to do so at high costs for everyone. And the research on the impact of pesticides on human health show that exposure to glyphosate, which is probably the most widely applied herbicide in agriculture, is associated with several types of cancer. Not only this, but the fact is that 23% of land areas have seen a reduction in productivity due to land degradation. So the fragility of soils, this thin layer of earth, which is the foundation for almost every growing organism and provides almost everything that we eat, puts in danger the sustainability, not only the environment, but also the economic and social and of this industrialized system of agriculture. So in many regions, soil fertility has been decreasing for decades, and large amounts of fertile soil have been and continue to be washed into rivers, lakes, and oceans, fertile soil that has gone forever. And with it, so goes much of the carbon that originated from the oxidation of the humus and now has been released into the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide. All of this with severe economic implications. So against this backdrop, we have a new mentality, a new approach, which is called regenerative agriculture, that tries to answer some of the problems that we've just mentioned. It has as its basis the conservation and rehabilitation of farming systems, focusing on topsoil regeneration, increasing biodiversity, improving the water cycle, supporting biosequestration, and increasing resilience to climate change, and in the end, enhancing soil fertility. This different approach, this different agriculture model based on diversifying farms and landscapes supports fulfilling many of the sustainable development goals created by the United Nations, the so-called SDGs. And regenerative agriculture has a broad scope in terms of SDG and can relate to alleviating poverty, SDG number 1, SDG number 2, ending hunger, SDG number 3, improving health, clean water, number 6, economic growth, and climate action. So we have something that's promised a lot. We are very expectant about this new methodology, this new approach, and this is why today in this webinar we have invited speakers that already started this path, already started to implement some of this, to apply the regenerative agriculture to the benefit of the environment, of consumers, but above all, also the economic feasibility for farmers. So let's start this webinar. Let me just introduce you who I have here with me, Cristina Amar da Costa, who will be guiding our conversations. Cristina is very passionate and very knowledgeable about the topic. Cristina has a degree and a PhD in agronomy and has been a professor at Escola Superior Agraria since 1995. She was also Deputy Director of the National Agronomy Station and Pro-President for the Institutional Coordination of the Polytech Institute of Viseu. She researches and studies agroecology and sustainable food systems with a focus on family farming, women farmers, and enhancement of ecosystem services. Cristina strongly advocates that the use of pesticides is unsustainable. And whenever she can, she's also a beekeeper. Cristina, I welcome you to Food for Sustainability webinars, and I'll now let you introduce our speakers. Thank you very much. Have a good session.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. It is a pleasure to be here with such interesting team. Of course, a special thanks for Food for Sustainability and Claudia for inviting me to participate in this amazing initiative. As you have heard, Food for Sustainability is trying to contribute to find a way out of the agricultural loop that Claudia referred. And one way to do it is to disseminate, to share, to discuss successful initiatives that are already working based on these principles. Sustainable ones, like regenerative agriculture. So for that discussion, for this share of experiences, we have as a first speaker, Jacobo Monereo. Jacobo is a project manager in the Regeneration Academy Foundation in Spain, where he is developing educational activities in regenerative agriculture at the La Junquera farm in the southeast of Spain. Jacobo holds a MBA in Agri-Food Business Management and has worked on different farms and countries and with different certification systems from organic, biodynamic, and now regenerative agriculture. So please, Jacobo, we invite you to share your project and vision with us.
Okay, thank you very much. I will start giving thank you for inviting me for this webinar for Food for Sustainability. It's a pleasure. So I will start presenting my screen. Okay, so I'm Jacobo Monereo. I'm working as a project manager in the Regeneration Academy. And also today, I will explain you what is the activity that we are doing here in the Regeneration Academy and also in La Junquera. This is the farm that the Regeneration Academy is based. So we are, well, I will present a little bit my college. Well, Alfonso is the manager of the farm of La Junquera. Danik, Sane, and me, we are the founders of Regeneration Academy. So we collaborate and we work together in this big project. I have only like 10-15 minutes, but I can speak like basically the whole afternoon in what we are doing here in La Junquera and with the Academy. So we are located and based in the southeast of Spain, north east of the province of Murcia. So it's well, a very isolated place, and well, I will explain later the characteristics for this type of climate and also the characteristics of the farm. So I introduce a little bit what is the aim of the Regeneration Academy. So our aim is use the educational tool to regenerate the land and also be the element of change and also help to this regenerative transition for the new generations and also professionals. So we have different kind of programs based in the in La Junqueras farm. So, and also we work with research institute, universities. Also we relate and combine this collaboration also with our programs focus on research. Also we work with local institutions, farmers, entrepreneurship also, and well, schools and several institutions and also like the organisms, local organisms here in the southeast of Spain. And also we work in a European level, working in several different projects. For example, we work close with AIT Food. We worked like several times, and also like we wrote I think we can say like the first manuals of different Mediterranean crops in regenerative in a regenerative way. And also we organize different courses in European level. We are part of LifeFarm Lighthouse Network. So I will explain later in the last part of this presentation. And let's go to the main topic that this is present. What is La Junquera farm and the characteristics that this farm has, and also the techniques that we implement in this farm. So this farm, La Junquera, is 1100 farm. Obviously, I really want to say that for being regenerative under our vision is you have to start or the organic certification is the basic for start like a regenerative agriculture. That is one thing that is very important to clarify at the beginning. Also, this farm is certificated in organic agriculture. So, and we implement and we have and we also little by little improve more regenerative techniques that we have here. So basically we have like a Mediterranean continental weather. Also the altitude that we are is like 1100 1200 meters above the sea level, so we are very, very high. So that's conditions the weather that we have here, making like extreme weather, and also combining with this kind of semi-desert climate that we have here. So for example, the precipitations here is around 228 millimeters per year, so it's very, very, very low precipitations. Each year the drought seasons is longer than the last year. So and also when rains like super heavy, that means and also damage damage a lot of the crops, and also that's why we apply or we implement some regenerative techniques. So the soils that we have here is basically limestone alkaline soil, so it's not like a very good soils for farming, but that is another goal that we have, like this regenerate soils, that this is very important. Obviously, our farm is like 100%, well, 99% dry land, so we don't have irrigations, but in the whole farm, so it's another challenge that we have. Also, and I will explain in the presentation, this farm has like a little village that also we are regenerate this village. Was abandoned village, and in the last 9 years we rebuilt this village, and now we are living here 30 people the whole year. In terms of crops, we have several crops like cereals, salmon, aromatics, pistachios, vineyard, apple trees, a little orchard, also livestock like sheep, cow, and this is a very important part of the farm also is the natural areas, that this is around 300 hectares. So what we regenerate, as Claudia said, like the main 3 blocks is soil, water, and biodiversity. Here in this type of climate, this is here in this location, we are start with like a very bad quality soils, and also this part is very important, like try to control erosion, improve the fertility, and increase our restructure the soil. With water, the same. We need this resource, and this in this area is year per year we have more progress to reach, conserve, and also like manage the water in a proper way. So these techniques that we implement here in the farm try to get like or optimize the resource and try to manage, you know, the resource in a very good way, because sometimes it causes like a very with this super heavy rainfall cause like a lot of damage. One, if there is the erosion. Two, or the goal is try to improve the infiltration in our land and conserve the resource. And biodiversity is the same. It's like try to increase the pollinators, create habitat for these pollinators and wildlife. And also that is very important that keeping our mind is local varieties and also like adapted crops. I put here like a little bit all the techniques that we implement now in the farm. Year per year is true that we try to improve and implement more and more techniques, and also like improve in and also change experiment. That this is very important that we have techniques that works, other techniques doesn't. So it's always like experiment, a life experiment. That is the main thing that you hear in this farm. Well, we will. Sorry, that is very important. That all these techniques has or have like an impact in soil, water, and biodiversity is something that is very important to keep in our mind. So we will start. So let's start with one technique that and it was the first technique that we implemented here in the farm. That I don't know if you are very related with soils, or we can say like infiltration lines. That the aim of these techniques is try to stop the erosion in plots that has like a little bit steep, okay, and improve the infiltrations in our fields. So how? Making this trench or in the plot, okay. So these lines, okay, stop the speed of the water. And also, as you can see here, stop the speed of the water, and also collect all the water of the rains. So improve the infiltrations in our plots. Normally, with this type of soil, with this lack of rains that we have, what happened when rains, that we have like a massive erosion in our plot, so we lose basically the topsoil, the 10 centimeter, 20 centimeter that all the nutrients are. So it's super important. Now in the farm we have more than 7 kilometers of trench of soils. So that is very important. Also, we start combining different techniques. So we also make some reforestation here in these trenches or plant with another type of crops and see this combination and how works this combination. Other techniques that we have here is, I don't know if you know, the keyline is another technique that try to improve the infiltration and also the manage the water in our plots. It's different than the soil. So basically, these techniques try to redistribute also the water in the plots, also stop the erosion and improve the infiltration in our fields. So here is the best example that how it looks like a conventional frame of plantation of almonds and how it looks like a keyline plot. So this is like almost like 5 hectares that we have here of keyline. And well, this little row that I put here that you can see also like, well, how does it works, like the water. Also that you can see here, you know, the erosion, okay, in the middle of the plot, okay. So when rains, the rains stop here on the top of the curve and goes to left and the right to the plot. So try to distribute a little bit the water. Also, these areas here that you can see, the areas that is like a kind of vegetation, also stop the erosion and create some habitat for the wildlife and also some pollinators. So it's also another important thing to keep in our mind. This is another view. So this is like a part of the farm that we have an organic almond plot, but also we have here the keyline plot that was designed, I think, in 4 years ago, maybe. Okay, other technique related for soil, water, and diversity is ponds. Is super important, and also here in this semi-desertic climate, we have more than 60 ponds in the whole farm. Some of them are very big, others like not that big, but all of them retains water. The whole year or not, depend how wet is the year, but these ponds is incredible how it works. It's natural ponds. It's only like digging and compress the soil. So we have like a clayey soils that retain like very good the water. So this water makes like an explosion of vegetation, explosion of life, and also it helps to retain the water little by little, you know, create more humid areas, and also that is super important, like stop the erosion like incredibly. With the danas, that is like heavy rains that we have here in this part of Spain, like in the west, in the east, sorry, of Spain. So this is like a super heavy. Already we have passed like 1 dana. In some part of the east rains around in 1 day 300 liters in 1 day. This is like crazy. That's why we create these ponds. So it's amazing how it works and the life that brings to this kind of desert. This is some photos of, for example, we have like a super big one in a part of the farm, but also we can design like a little ones around the fields. Other techniques, like very similar to the ponds, that is like the sediment traps. Okay, that is these sediment traps have another different work of the ponds, because we try stop the erosion between fields. And also, stop this kind of erosion that this is like, for example, the gullies, okay, that we have in the farm. We create these sediment traps, making this kind of how do you say, like a barrier, okay, or dam, we can say, for stop the erosion of this kind of gullies. Most of the year are dry, but when rains, you know, fill it up to until the top, okay, with all the sediments, okay, of other parts of the plot. So we try to also and we need the soil of this plot, so we create these sediment traps to control the erosion, and also when rains, keep the water for, I don't know, 1-2 months or weeks, that the wildlife can drink, or also these sediment traps sometimes create like a kind of habitat for some wildlife operating natures.
Jacobo,
Other techniques that,
Jacobo,
yeah,
you have 2 more minutes, okay?
yeah.
You have 2 more minutes. It is okay?
Okay, yeah. Well, sorry, we need like a lot of time, but I will pass like
I
fast,
know.
okay? Okay, so we have the green cover, so you see the difference between, you know, a plot that we have you know, on the farm. We try to like remove or we can try to change, you know, to this kind of desert of trees to like a green path. Also, like this green cover retains a lot the erosion, improve the infiltration. Obviously, with the biodiversity, create like a very positive impact. Vegetation strip is kind of with the similar idea of the green covers, but is maintained like, or leave like a vegetation strip or between the line of the, for example, in this case, the pistachios, that this is very important, that also stop the erosion and retains and improve the filtration and the biodiversity. Use the compost in the farm is very important. Instead, like fertilizers, like chemical ones, obviously is not allowed in organic agriculture. Also, we start with lumber compost and also the lumber filters. We use the residual another residual water for intensive pig farms, and with these lumber filters we become in another like a bio compost that we use in the farm. So it's very important. Adapted crops. We try to plant and in the whole farm we use adapted crops. It's very important that these crops are adapted to this type of climate. So, and also we have aromatics, almonds, and also varieties of grain that, for example, are local varieties more adapted to this climate. In a good year, the production is very stable. For example, vegetables, we have to keep and we have to promote the local varieties because it's a part of the biodiversity. Also, we have like this type of local breed that is almost extinct. For that reason, it's not like a commercial breed. This breed cannot use for milk or for meat, and it's almost extinct. Is I think around 30 cows around the world, and we have in the farm now 22 of these 30. So we try to improve and also save this breed of cows to the extinction. Diversification. This farm 10, 11 years ago was like a monoculture of grains and now has more than 7 types of different crops in the whole, like in these 1,100 hectares. So it's very important also, like keep in your mind and in a regenerative mind the word of diversification. Reforestation also, and improve the natural areas. We have several programs with the European Union as well for reforest and go with these initiatives. Now we have more than 15,000 plant trees in this year, and we will continue with these techniques, obviously using local wild plants and bushes, not pine or some pine, but the 90% is like autochthon and local varieties. Other techniques, hedge, border for the pollinators and wildlife, obviously holistic grazing, and use these cows for make like and try to implement this holistic grazing. Also with the sheep, we are doing the same thing. And minimum tillage is very important, that and also for the structure of the soil, no tilling like crazy as like a conventional or organic agriculture that is incredible. How also gas consume, and also the how affects the soil in that sense. And we will finish with a photo of the village that we are living here. The Regeneration Academy also give all the courses in this village, and little by little we are rebuilding and bring life to the rural areas. That this is another thing that we have to regenerate, that this is the social part, that this is also a part of the regenerative agriculture. So thank you very much. This is a sample of our partners that we work with, and that's it.
Thank you, Jacobo. It was a very interesting experience that you have shared with us. I didn't see any questions in the chat, but now is the time for the questions. So maybe you have been doing a huge investment in the farm, namely in terms of soil maintenance. Have you done any cost or economic assessment to know how it will be the balance between the costs and the revenues?
Yeah, so
also including environmental benefits associated with it?
Yeah, so obviously all these change or move like at this big farm as I said, like 10 years ago, was like a monoculture of grains, like 1,100 of monoculture of grains. So obviously there is like a big investment. Okay, so but during this these 9 years, we need, and also we have to keep in our mind a holistic view and long-term view if we want to talk about regenerative farming. So instead, for example, economic diversification, obviously you take less risk that only or has only like monoculture. Also, for example, is how try to adapt these crops to this type of climate. For example, it's very important that for example, like in the cereals, okay, we change the varieties of cereals to like another type of cereals that are more stable, okay, and also in the south are not like a very productive area instead of cereals. But for example, in value, okay, these varieties has like a nutritional values that this is different than the average or the rest of the cereals that we have in the market. Also, yeah, change a little bit the consume for humans, also like organic, add more value to this type of crops. Yeah, if we talk about soil erosion, that this is a part that affects in our finance. We keep also a lot of resource, okay, and also like all with this type of techniques, you know, we try to optimize all the resources that we have in the farm, and this has an impact in also like in the finance. I can hear you.
Cristina, you're muted.
Yes, sorry, of course I'm muted. So we have several questions for you now. Maybe we can choose 2 or 3 of them because we are already a bit late. So there are 2 guests asking, are the sediment traps in association with the ponds? And can you explain better the sediment traps, please? And the other question I will ask you to answer both is, how many people work in the farm beside the 4 that you mentioned? And it's easy to find workers when you need them?
So I will start with the last question. So now direct and indirect, we have working in the farm 21 people. So the monoculture to this diversification also has like a social impact because with the monoculture we had working like 1 person the whole year and eventual like 4 max only for the grains, and now we have 21 10 like the whole year. So yeah, with the sediment trap techniques is more focused on in areas that we have like a very big erosion that we can.
Cristina, you're muted. I think Jacobo had some problem with the, he was mentioning the internet connection. It was some storm, so probably.
Maybe we can go to the second guest.
Yes, and then we'll resume at the end.
Yes, at the end. Okay.
Thank you.
So Jacobo, you have.
Yeah, I'm back.
Right. So maybe we are going to pass to the next guest, and then we will go back to the questions in the end, if it's okay for you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
So our second guest is Francisco Alves. Francisco comes from Porcos Natura company. He is originally from Alentejo, and he has worked there for the last 20 years. At Porcos Natura, they keep up the family tradition by breeding Alentejano pigs. Francisco's dad developed a very innovative system for this that starts at the pig's maternity. They ensure that the farm has a special area for breeding sows with lots of shadow, water and huts. And after birth, they transfer the baby pigs to open areas to walk and graze. A couple of years ago, Francisco came across with the concept of regenerative soil management. And since then, based on rotational grazing, they ensure the quality of the pasture and regenerate the soil. Francisco, please present us your example, your case.
So thanks for the invitation. My presentation with pictures is not available, but I think you understand very quickly the work that we try to do. Our farm is south of Lisbon, 90 kilometers of south, near to Montemoro Novo. We are in a family farm with 700 hectares of montado, with cork trees and oak trees, and about 50 hectares of open areas without any tree that we use to do cover crops or different plantations to graze with the cows. 20 years ago, my father only have cows and pigs, and 7 years ago, I started to make different courses about regenerative agriculture and holistic management, and very early make me a lot of sense. And I try to view the context of our farm and try to understand what is the best tools that we can put in our context to help to regenerate the soil. We translate the 250 cows into 200 mothers of pigs. Now we have 4 different species. We work with goats, sheep, cows, and pigs. And now at this time we have 250 cows, 80 mothers of pigs, 100 goats, and 50 sheep. We are now to work for the perfect balance of the 4 different species. We believe that we can increase the number of sheep and the number of goats. Our farm is completely different in different areas. We have areas with a lot of with mountain areas with a lot of trees and bush plants, very intense, and we have montado, more flat, about 30-40 trees per hectare, and the open areas. So I think to put the regenerative practice in the field, I have to use different tools. So we choose to have 4 different species because they make different jobs. They have different kind of grazing. They have different kind of organic matter of impact in the soil. So we believe that in our context, the 4 different species, it's the perfect tool for our context. So what we are doing now, it's working the cows in the more open areas, because the cow is the most efficient, because it's the most heavy, the most big animal, and we put the cows first to eat all the grass that we have, and then we choose to work with the pigs after, or the goats after, depend of the area, to make the impact. And what we are seeing, it's amazing transformation with a very short time, in the benefits in the soil and in the health of all animals. When we start with this rotational graze, we understand, compare with the traditional graze, what the days of grazing that we lost all of these years in past. Because when we change the animals every day, we win a lot. We win a lot of different things. We win a lot of manure fertilized, because the manure of the animals are very concentrated. We win a lot of rest time. So it's amazing what we can do with the different species. Our goal in the farm is very focused in the livestock. We use the different open areas to cover crops and to feed the pigs. Our production of pigs is a little different of the usual, because we have the pigs whole life in nature. We have 800 square meters for one mother. that keep in his paddock during two months. We don't use any intervention in the animals. We don't put ivermectin or vaccinate with nothing. We only do rotational management with the animals. We don't have any problem with the animals. And after that, we put the pigs in a group, and we made a rotation with in all the fence, and we choose how work we need in the different seasons, and use the tool of the pig to spread the seeds in the field and cover, and not use the tractor, not till the soil, something like that. With the goat, we are working in the water lines with electric fence, and we move the goats to clean the organic the quantity of plants that we have near the water line, with the threat of the fires in the summer. So it's amazing how livestock can help you, and at the same time create more efficiency and more money in a farm. We only have one worker with us. He living in a farm. He started in a farm with my grandfather. He worked with us at 40 years ago. So now we are started a process of intern. We receive intern people who are interested in this kind of contest, in this kind of experience. We receive people in the farm to learn and to help us too. And it's about that. It's about to very focus in the montado with different species, and the management of the human, and trying to people understand that montado need the animals behind, because when you put out the animals, you have a lot of problems. You have to till the soil because of the fires. You suffer of erosion. But the ecosystem it's more poor. The trees happen to dying more fast. So the work that we want to share, it's how the animals can do a positive impact in all the system in the montado. And of course, people have to understand too the human is very important to management the system. So I think it's the triangle of the trees, animals, and people. It's what people have to think. It's the future for the next generations.
Okay. Thank you, Francisco, very much for your short presentation. We have gained some minutes. So I have some questions here. Maybe I will start with them instead of my own. So, open question for the audience. Knowing that the abandonment of rural land continues to increase with the aging of the majority of farmers, and that there will be more and more free land to explore, what are the challenges that currently still lead to a resistance from the conventional sectors in scaling up regenerative or ecological agricultural operations? So
where I can read the answer, because it's very long to understand.
I will put maybe in a few words, but
Okay.
I will leave this question for the end because this needs some reflection. Anyone can read in the chat this long explanation, but it's related with the lack of people in the fields. I will put my question it was similar, but in a different way. It was, what would be your message that you think it would make the difference to convince and engage young or other farmers that are not yet in regenerative agriculture? So what is the good in your system that will allow us to convince others to engage in regenerative agriculture?
I think the most important, now in the last 2 years, we see increase of interest in other farmers. So it's very good. 2 days ago, we have a course in our farm with a lot of people. So the things are happen. I think what I can say is the farmers who began these practices never go back to traditional practices. So I think it's the more powerful mindset that we can say. People have the afraid that they have a lot of work to change the animals every day, or they have make a little confusion how the cows can how we can change the cows every day, or how we cannot till the soil and at the same time have good productions. For me, what I think it's the better way to show the people is to bring the people at the field, show you the difference, with very little work, with very little time, you can see amazing difference in the field. Rotational management, it's a perfect tool for start, I think. This is a very simple thing to move the animals and see what's happened in the field that we changed the animals 3 days ago, something like that. And another thing, it's when you don't till the soil, you don't see erosion of the rain. You see it's very powerful. I think it's very powerful when the people view the things in the field. I think it's the most correct way. Okay. Another thing is when the people see all these different techniques and different things, have to understand what is your own context or in your own farm, because most of the people don't analyze our farm. The grandfather have cows, the father have cows, they have cows now, or the same thing with sheep, and they lose money, and they have to buy seeds all the year, fertilize all the year. They spend a lot of time in the tractor, and so they are not with an open mind to different techniques and different views out of the farm. So I think holistic management is it's amazing for that, for the people understand different way to view our same farm, your farm, and change the practice. So holistic management is a crazy tool.
I have to interrupt you.
Okay, sorry.
Question. So first of all, two easy ones. You have Montado.
Yeah.
So do you feel that the Montado is gaining resilience with your change of practices? And also someone is asking, what cultures are you doing in the rotation that you are implementing?
So second question, in the Montado, we don't do nothing, only natural pasture. And outside the Montado, in the clean hours, we do different mix, winter and spring mix, for help the animals and to make hay for the animals in the winter, because you use the technique for the bale grazing technique to put in Montado. Bale grazing needs to put the way in the soil, and the animals hit directly to cover the soil and to put the manure more concentrate to help the soil to recover. And so I think it's amazing technique for the Montado, for bring resilient and construct soil in the Montado. For the pigs, to help the pigs, because the pigs don't eat green grass in summer. They don't dry grass in summer. They only eat green grass. We do a mix of pumpkins, grain, Sudan grass, dreams, something like that. And for the cows, now I'm learning with Ben Taylor. Ben Taylor go to our farm, and it's amazing guy to learn about cover crops and what help as more at the soil in the animals. In the Montado, yes, we have a lot of young trees. The whole trees are not dying, and the Montado, for me, the correct way to management, it's you made a good impact with the animals, and then you made a long rest time, and if you can, put the soil very cover in the summer. Okay, so plant grade, you have a plant grades is very important to make your own decisions correct. So Montado is very degraded, but at the same time is a very rich contest. Is a very rich ecosystem. So if we can do practices that help the Montado, he recover very fast.
But you feel that he's recovering, that Montado is recovering. Yeah, okay. You feel that the Montado is recovering.
Yeah, it's recovering. We have a lot of areas with a lot of young trees, and now we have to change the management to put more animals in the system to help the young trees. They don't break the trees. People think about the cows or the animal. Any animal can damage the Montado. It's not the cow. It's not the cow. It's the how.
So I will leave the questions about social and economics for the end, because any of the guests can answer them. So the last question is Diogo is asking do you feel there are changes in the soil chemistry and biology already seen by you, Phil?
What we make some samples or soil samples, but I think he's a very I'm not the correct person to respond what kind of soil we have in the past and what kind of soil we have now, and what kind of what things what is different now. What I can tell you is when you do a correct when you respect the soil, the principles of the soil, you see in the soil with the same sample, you see different results. So I think we have to focus in this kind of experience and think about the first thing, respect the principle of the soil and put a correct practice in there, and you see different results. So it's what I'm telling you in a few minutes. Montado is a very rich system, and I think the people have to worry about, first of all, good practice and see amazing results. And so I invite all the people, all the farmers to change little things and see the amazing things happen.
Okay, thank you, Francisco, very much. We are becoming late again, so I will invite the third guest, that is Ben Taylor Davies from Regen Ben. Ben uses biological methods to produce without using artificial inputs. He operates on his family farm in Rosson Y. Incredibly or not, his father discouraged him to becoming a farmer for different reasons, one of them being mental health, well-being. So Ben graduated in geography at Liverpool University in 1997, and then, probably for mental health reasons, he decided to go back to the farm and do what farmer sons supposedly or so often do, to cover the farm. So please, Ben, back to the farm. The floor is yours to share your experience.
Thank you very much. Right, good to see Francisco. I'm rather hoping this is going to work. Unfortunately, on Teams, I can neither see anybody or hear anybody, so I'm rather see. If anybody can still speak, can you just say you can see what I'm seeing?
Yes, we can see.
Yes, you are.
Yes.
So this is actually a mural I've had created on one of my barns, just to try and explain to the general public and other farmers what we're farming in the middle of this picture or mural, and what we're aspiring to, or certainly achieving, on the left and right hand side of centre. Yeah, it's a fantastic creative drawing, and it's 2 meters wide, a quite big canvas. We're rather thrilled with that as an educational tool. So I guess most of you are wondering what on earth I'm doing talking to people from the UK. And so I thought it'd be quite useful just to give a very brief introduction to who I am. So my name is Ben Taylor Davis. I was born on this farm in July 1976. The photograph was taken in so not that long, not only 40 years before I was born, and I'm now 40 years old or 45 years old. So it's incredible how things have changed so dramatically. As I was told in the interview, in the introduction, I was persuaded not to do anything to do with farming, and ended up with a geography degree, just purely because it was probably something my parents would prefer me not to be. I actually left university and I didn't come back to the farm. In actual fact, I became an agronomist or an agrochemical advisor and salesman, selling ag chem, pesticides, fertilizers, seeds, and that sort of thing, and advising on their best use. And I did that for nearly 20 years. I married my wife Helen, and we had 2 daughters, Tegan and Erin. And then in 2012. That's a lie. 2011, our son. We were having a very good life. Unfortunately, Job was kicked in the head by a horse in 2012.
Ben, apologies to interrupt, but we are having some problems with the connection. Do you think it's possible to switch off your camera, just to see if we can hear you better? Just the camera, not the presentation.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, apparently so.
Okay, we'll have another go, shall we?
Unfortunately,
so hit by a horse, and I suffered terribly with mental health after coming to terms with a disabled child and all the life changes that we were going to need to make. It was then that my wife advised me or persuaded me to apply to do a Nuffield scholarship, a scholarship awarded in the UK to people in agriculture and food production, and it allows you to go and travel the world, looking at other farms and industries and that sort of thing, and basically learn about different techniques and farming techniques and bring them back to the UK and talk and discuss to other farmers in the UK what you'd found. I actually did quite a lot of traveling. I went to across all of America. I went to South Africa. I went to Brazil and Argentina. I actually went to Chile and Peru. I then went all across Europe, all across Russia, as you can see, down through China, across Australia. So I was rather busy. I spent 21 weeks traveling and learning all about various techniques of farming. But it was just quite ironic that this was probably one of the first people I met. And this chap, for those that don't know, is called Gabe Brown, and he's written a very famous book. And he took me out to Brown's Ranch after I met him, and he said, come and have a look what we're doing. At the end of the day, farming starts and ends with the soil. And if you look after it, it'll look after you. And it absolutely and the enjoyment he was getting out of exactly what he was doing. And I thought, well, this is really quite interesting. I was lucky that he put me in touch with people all over the world that were practicing very similar things. And those were the people I went and spent an awful lot of time with. And then I came home and realized that things were probably not quite as good as I'd seen. Fortunes in terms of soil erosion. Ours is more water-based, but even so, it was creating terrible messes in the environment. But more to the point, as farmers, we own soil, and when you consider that's what we really is what we do, it seems a shame that half of it gets either blown away or get down the drain. This is a photograph I took only 2 years ago of our beautiful river, but unfortunately this river hides some fairly horrific secrets, where our phosphate levels are so high, our eutrophication is killing fish all summer long, and creating some really horrific dead water, so to speak. What was one of the most beautiful rivers in the UK is now dying on its feet. A couple of things I learnt when I was traveling the world was the fact that farmers we make money. At least that's what we should be doing, because we look at water and rain, we look at the energy from the sun, and we look at carbon dioxide, of which there is plenty. We put it through our catalyst, or as we should say, our soil, and we produce food that we can sell. And what's happened is, unfortunately, there are a salesman on every corner of every idea you might have that seems to actually extract money from this very basic business model. So it was time to start changing the way I was farming. But we're really poor at harvesting all this energy that keeps coming to the earth, because our solar radiation hitting us in July, August, September were the very times of the year that the crops had been either harvested and waiting for the following crop, and therefore there was an awful lot of radiation going to waste. And more to the point, as we all are as farmers, which are solar farmers, it seems an awful lot, or slightly ironic, that when there's most solar energy hitting the earth, we're not actually absorbing it. Interesting enough, it was interesting listening. Fortunate to go and visit him in December, and I'm back there in July, and I'm hoping to catch up with the other two guys that I met as well, and we had a really good time. Saw some fantastic things, so looking forward to going back there. Interesting enough, something I tell everybody is a livestock farmer. Of course, most of your livestock is invisible. And when you consider that you've got livestock above the ground and you need to feed them every day and make sure they're fed with either grass and forage or whatever you're feeding them, and if you don't feed them, they die, of course, the very same occurs for all your livestock underground. It needs feeding. And this livestock underground have huge numbers and huge biomass, and actually weigh up to 5 cows per hectare. And they eat what pulls out of root exudates, so the amino acids that pour out of roots once they're photosynthesizing healthily. If they can't actually get that, they start eating the dead plant root itself. If they can't get a dead plant root, they start eating the crop residue. And unfortunately, more often than not, if they have none of the above, they start actually eating the organic matter in the soil, reducing the quantity of the organic matter and the quality, and ultimately soil health is in massive decline. And this is something that's happened not just Portugal, not just the UK, but the world over. And when you start thinking and checking for soil health, it's really quite important that you use your senses. And one of the senses is the sense of smell. Soil should smell healthy. And when I say smell healthy, they should smell of a sugar, which is that rich exudate coming out of plant roots. And that's rather quite important. And this is important in a couple of ways, in that the leaf captures the sunlight, you get photosynthesis, the sugar pours out of the roots, the microbes feed on those sugars, but exchange with the plant nutrients. The nutrient builds a bigger solar panel, and therefore a bigger leaf. Therefore, it's a continuous circle. The leaves are able to capture more sun, more photosynthesis, more sugar. More microbes, more nutrients again, and round it goes. So it's rather quite important that you start spinning this flywheel of soil health. I talk about diversity quite a lot, and I've heard diversity mentioned a few times, and it's really quite important. And just one simple observation, we do lots of trials, is this is a field of wheat, and on the right hand side you can see that single clone variety where a fungus disease of rust is actually gone through the whole crop and pretty much infected every plant. And where we have some diversity, where we've just taken 144 varieties of wheat, mixed them all together and planted them as one, you can see the line stops absolutely at the point of that. And this is the importance of diversity and getting off the reliance of all the fungicides and pesticides that are so easily sold to us. This is our flerd. We actually keep our cattle and sheep and goats and pigs and alpacas together. And what you see, I'm sorry about the camera work, I was trying to show we've got some beautiful swallows, swifts and house martins, some of the rarest species we have in the UK, that absolutely thrive when we graze well, graze in long pasture land, have the insect pests, the insects and all that sort of thing. And it's a typical example of great biodiversity and how nature actually benefits from what we're trying to create. We grow cover crops. The little inset photograph is how cover crops are normally grown in the UK, where the animal grazes it to the point of absolute extinction and starts eating a lot of the soil. The cover crops we grow on the left-hand side is where we actually start moving animals away, and onto the right-hand side is where we move them to. And this allows the soil to remain armoured. We've got lots of diversity in our cover crops. The living root remains, so we're still feeding that underground biology, and therefore the whole thing becomes rather quite more important than actually focusing on just the livestock feeding itself. A healthy soil and is really rather quite important for plant growth, and I'll just explain why. You have soil moisture in all soils, and this moisture, the CO2 that's being respired by all your microbial activity, and that's rather quite important. It forms carbonic acid, and carbonic acid is something that actually strips off potassium and also phosphate to make it available for plants via microbes. So they're really quite important. This is the action of the moon, and we know that the moon itself plays an important role in the tides of our oceans, but in actual fact it has a huge impact on our soil moisture, because when the moon phase comes out and it's strong, it pulls our soil moisture up through a healthy soil. And this is really quite important, because all our CO2 that's been respired then comes out of the soil surface, and there is absolutely no other obvious explanation as to why all stomata are on the underside of a leaf capturing this CO2. There is 6 times more CO2 that comes out of the soil surface than in the atmosphere itself. So 500 million years of evolution has stated that it would be far easier and more efficient to capture this CO2 coming out of the soil surface. The moon disappears. The oxygen and nitrogen that's in the atmosphere pours back into the soil. And of course, those microbes are able then to continue respiring, breathing oxygen, breathing CO2, and continuing. And that happens twice a day. And that's why it's so important that we have soils that function and are able to cleanse themselves, or essentially, as I call it, breathing. Another thing we touch on is the fact that we need to understand that where we see insects and fungus on plants and crops, we also need to understand that they do not compete with humans for food. Wherever you see an insect, it's generally on food that is absolutely considered unfit, nutritionally poor, dead or dying. So if we have insects or fungus on our crops, we have something that's basically not humanly edible food. William Albrecht quite well by saying insects are nature's garbage collectors and diseases are a cleanup crew. In other words, we should, if we've got insects or diseases, we really have got a very unhealthy crop. I work with the universities over here in the UK, and this is something they sent me the other day that I think is quite useful, or quite cool, shall I say. And that just goes to show that in actual fact there's now more and more proof building as to the use of all these regenerative techniques, and how much money I'm now able to save on irrigation or nitrogen and all other inputs. So it is absolutely phenomenal of the work that's now being done to prove these concepts. I think without further ado, I'm probably out of time because I think we were getting rather behind. So all I would say is, put the fun back into farming. That's certainly something we've done. Regenerate your mind, your soul, your life, your farm, and of course the environment. And I'll say thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ben. It was very, very interesting, and you finalized with a huge information for farmers that can make the difference. If you are recovering 70% of fertilizers, that is great. That's a powerful message. So I don't know, I think there are no other questions. Claudia.
So I think Diogo just posted a question to Ben.
Yes, I've seen it. So Diogo is asking, you have mentioned the importance of soil smell. Do you run visual soil assessments? If so, what are your thoughts about it? And out of curiosity, what is the score of your farm?
Do I run a visual soil assessment? If so, what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah.
What are the scores of my farm? I do run visual soil assessments, but I don't actually. So I do physical soil assessments, measuring biology, measuring chemistry,
okay,
that sort of thing. And when I do visual soil assessments, I don't score them particularly. I just know what I'm looking for in terms of where would I score my farm. Better than average, I would say. We're still on a journey. We're still on a journey. We're still learning all the time. But and I work on the 70-30 principle. If I can get 70% of the farm right every year, it's certainly better than what we were doing, and that was probably 10% right.
Okay, so going back to the question of João Henriques, maybe just simplifying it, what do you think are the challenges that still led to a resistance from conventional sectors in scaling up regenerative or ecological agricultural operations?
What do I see as the barriers, did you say, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, the barriers are probably collapsing fairly fast at the moment with the cost of fertilizers. It's probably the amount you need to learn, the amount you need to get over the concept that this is old-fashioned farming, because a lot of people think it's a backward step. It's not. It's a huge forward step in so much as what we can do. A lot of people feel, and rightly so, because a lot of people get it terribly wrong. I'd like to come out and do a proper workshop one day out with you and start explaining how to get away. What's happened, we've concentrated so much on physics and chemistry of the soil. It takes a little bit of physics and a little bit of chemistry to actually undo all of the problems. This is not all about just jumping off a cliff into the unfortunately generally huge amounts of problems. This is a real problem that needs a little bit of unwinding before you can actually start a biological system.
Okay, maybe for the three of you, Claudia is saying that one criticism against regenerative agriculture is that this kind of agriculture cannot feed the world. What are your views about this criticism?
Ben, you can start. Ben, can you start or can I talk?
Yep. Yeah, no, I can start. I'm going to 10 ton on a regenerative system. My next door neighbour is going 10 ton a hectare of wheat on a non-regenerative system. I do not see yield penalties for regenerative. It's a myth that regenerative agriculture cannot feed the world. An absolute myth.
Yeah, I think it's the same. It's the opposite. In our very short experience, I put more different species in the contest. I work with the same kind of the same number of people, and I want to increase more. And people have to understand that we are in a unique context of Montado. The Portuguese farmers and the Spanish farmers have to understand that we have amazing system to put livestock, and we need more livestock in the system and diversify with the different species. So regenerative practices, you can put more animals in the system, you recover more first the soil, so it's a win-win. So this is no make any sense that people to have the doubt of the regenerative agriculture can fill the world. And if you ask Ben or some people who have very experience with the cereals, with cover crops, they tell you that the practice of regenerative agriculture increase the production, increase the production of the soil, the capacity to retention of the water, everything.
Thank you. Thank you. Jacobo, do you want to say something? You are without a sound.
Yeah. So, in especially in a topic or
whatever you want to say.
Well, but in general, I think the main thing is change our perspective and also our mind about farming, and also the time. It's very important have in your mind that implement these techniques. Some techniques you see the results like fast, but others not. So I think preserve or be constant, you know, and also like try it, because it's something that we have. For example, here in La Junquera, we try to implement some techniques that doesn't work. Obviously, the part of experiment and know your farm, know your climate, adapt these techniques for your type of soil, climate, etc., is super important. It's the basic. Know the place, know everything that you have around you, and have this kind of develop this holistic view that it's not only like one solution, it's not only one problem, it's like it's more complex. And also yeah, I think probably this is the basics. And for example, for a farmer that wants to start in the regenerative agriculture, is very important. This kind of aspect that sounds very obviously it sounds very obvious, but it's not.
Thank you, Jacobo. I would say that Ben showed one of his slides answered very well this question. It was the one that presented with the farming, the incredible business model, and it showed very well that farmers are using ecosystem services very well, and what they are doing it better in regenerative or in other agroecological models is using what is free in nature, the soil, the sun, the water, and they are using it better, and they are becoming more resilient, and that makes productivity at the same level as conventional agriculture and less dependent on external factors that are nowadays a huge problem when we think about the cost of energy and fertilizers and food and etc. etc. Claudia, we don't have much more time, I think.
No, Christine, I think we ran out of time. I have to hope that everyone has enjoyed this small conversation, informal conversation. There's still a lot to learn. We could be here talking all afternoon. Thank you very much for such an interesting talk and sharing your experience and be passionate about regenerative agriculture. I'm sure there will be questions that will pop up and we'll try to address them later on. Let me say goodbye and thank you once again, all the participants. Let me remind you that we'll be back next week with more on the topic of regenerative agriculture. We will talk about visual soil assessments. That's been in the pipeline, and we talk about it all the webinars. But we also have some retailers trying to understand, how food producers can also help farmers, and we'll be talking, with some more surprises. So thank you very much. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, all the speakers. Thank you for the audience, and we'll see you in a week's time. Bye.